Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show, ladies and gentlemen. It is just 2 minutes after 7, and I hope you've had your coffee, had your tea, and you're enjoying the budget conversation so far. Yesterday, the Minister of Finance would have presented a budget for fiscal 2022, and this morning we have the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Stuart Young, here with us to chat about, some of the things that were laid out inside the budget. We also have the Vice President of the Trinidad and Tobago Automotive Dealers Association, Mr. Rondall, Fields, here with us. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, good morning.
Natalie.
You look like you just wake up.
Again? I don't think you wake up. You're assuming you went to sleep.
So let us start with you, Minister. The budget was read, and of course, there were a lot of goodies in it, as usual. As Valmiki Arjun just said, is that every year we have some really good ideas coming out of the budget, and Column Imber did not disappoint when we look at the removal of VAT on some, food, on some
items,
basic foods, which will help the people. I know that there was something in there for those with disability. I think is there equipment coming in, that there wouldn't be any taxes on that. Where you are concerned for those electric vehicles, or removal of all taxes on electric vehicles that were 2 years or younger, I think. And there was so much more. So just your overall view of the budget.
You all have, first of all, thank you all for the opportunity. Yes. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. As I was just telling Valmiki as he was leaving, the world is in a difficult place. We're facing a pandemic. Not many people alive have faced a pandemic before. Yeah. So as a government, it is normally interesting to govern, but to do so in a pandemic where our revenue, one of our main streams of revenue was down in the past year. Fortunately, in the last few months, it started to go up again. That's oil and gas, derivatives and commodities. And in looking at it, what the government had to do is how do we stimulate the economy? All right, I am pleased to meet Rondall for the first time in person. We've been actually communicating, because when we get to the discussion on electric vehicles, it's something I am particularly personally excited about. So what it is how do you stimulate the economy? I think we've come with a budget that does that across the board. We focus on the SMEs. We've touched the persons with disability. We have heard the cries of the public that food prices. But when you look at it, food prices going up are a global phenomenon, right? And that's actually linked to energy prices as well, because you have ammonia at over $600 a metric ton, and that feeds into agriculture. So wheat prices have gone up and these types of things. So it is a cycle that we hope things will start to settle down as the world learns to live with and deal with COVID. But what do we do in the meantime? Also, what you've seen from the energy perspective is we know we have to decarbonize, right? This is real, it is live. Many countries are missing the boat, because if we don't bring down the global climate and temperature, we're seeing it.
We're seeing it.
You're seeing it. You had unprecedented flooding in Germany.
Oh, yes.
London, you remember seeing the videos of London
flooding.
Hail in Tacarigua. You have flooding in New York, China, all across the world. So it is real. It is on our doorsteps. What do we do? So one of the things we look at in the energy sector is how do we pull back from the fossil fuels. But of course, in Trinidad, you have to balance it, because our economy is based on oil and gas. So we still have to get it. And
why is that still the case, Minister? Why are we still based in oil and gas?
Well, listen, once you're an oil and gas province, you look all around the world. Any province, any country that is fortunate enough, and I'll say fortunate enough, to have those natural resources that the world is looking for, you're going to utilize it. So yes, you talk about diversification, and we are moving towards, is a cliche, is a buzzword.
It's been.
Right? It has been for decades, because the truth is you have a resource that the rest of the world wants. Even when you look at renewables, solar, wind, you're looking at countries that don't have the oil and gas. So are the ones forced to do it, to move away from the purchasing of oil and gas, whereas we have had it. We continue to have it. It is how do we continue to compete in a closing global environment.
But I was about to say, if people are finding ways to do without it, then does that mean that they're going to buy it less from us, which means our income is going to continue to go down?
And the answer to that is yes, but over a period of time. Okay. So I have said oil, we have to try and get up as much of our oil as possible by 2028, right? That's the time frame I've given us. But gas, and I've been on a number of international panel discussions in the last few weeks, gas is going to be around to 2050. That's what we think now, but it's still shifting very quickly, because gas is still a very clean burning fossil fuel.
And you know what? I think that people don't recognize how difficult it is, because that's like saying to somebody, listen, you have a piece of land, there are diamonds there, but don't use it, you know? And the reality is that when you look at that, it's the thing that brings in the single largest amount of money, that is always a balancing act for countries that are oil and gas rich, in quotation marks.
Let me put it this way, if I may. It is what is the natural resource of your country? I'm looking at Natalie and I'm thinking of Jamaica. That's like telling Jamaica, look, move away from the beaches, move away from tourism. Jamaica's natural resource that brings in that forex is the tourism, is the beaches and this type of thing. The difference with the oil and gas is the effect it is having on the global environment. And that is how the world is looking at balancing it now.
Yeah. So, Rondall, let's bring you in on the conversation, because when we were here talking, I was watching some of the body language. So the government is saying that, listen, yes, it is cognizant of the fact that it needs to move away from oil and gas, and it is cognizant of what is happening to the environment. It has gone ahead. You've been advocating all this time for those electric vehicles to be brought in tax-free so that it can encourage people to get to that point where it's not using combustible engines, right? He heard your cry. He took that note to cabinet. The cabinet then decided yes, and we heard the Minister of Finance yesterday said no VAT, no taxes whatsoever on electric vehicles 2 years or younger. What's the response from the Trinidad and Tobago Automotive Dealers Association?
We must admit it is indicative of a step in the right direction, but definitely there are still some things we need to flesh out.
Absolutely.
It's something that definitely I would have spoken to you about, I believe, as well. When it comes to the hybrid, now we've advocated for hybrid and electric, and it is for that purpose that hybrid must be the intermediary step. We cannot be too overzealous. Not even Japan did that and jumped straight from fossil fuel into electric. Had they listened to us 8 years ago under the last administration, and even under your administration in 2015, when we were telling them start training, start putting the infrastructure in place for electric and hybrid opposed to CNG, maybe now we might have been at that stage that we are ready immediately to jump into the electric vehicle. We thought that yesterday we'd also see some re-incentivization on the hybrid vehicle. It is important to do that so that the nation now has the opportunity. The state now needs to get behind the electric. I'm seeing you all are doing that now, to put in the right infrastructure, to put in the right training. But in that time, the intermediary step needs to be the hybrid vehicle. We started off so well in 2015, and I continue to see one thing that was mentioned yesterday, and it hurt me to my heart, Minister Young, and I had to mention it. I heard the minister, and I know that the finance minister is very meticulous in the things he said, so I actually rewinded it and listened to him say it. You understand? So he told us that there were 15,300 CNG vehicles on the road. And that is inclusive of OEM, which is the original manufacturer, which is for people who may not understand. The Honda Cities, we may have seen Ansama Carl bringing, and also the conversions included. 15,300 alone. I am telling you, myself and Mr. Babu sat in a meeting 8 years ago. We also wrote 5 years ago, even onto the last minister, and tried to convince the ministers that CNG would not work. The country would not go in that direction. We tried to persuade them.
But why not? Why are you saying that CNG won't work?
Look at
Is it the fact that you all are campaigning against it why it hasn't worked?
No, it can't be that at all, because if the state, just allow me, if the state had gotten behind it for all these years, had pushed, had pioneered it, they've given people free kits, they give you free gas cards, all these things. We had no support from hybrid and electric. What we told them, it was a futuristic alternative, and that people would go hybrid, people would go electric, people would go to the direction that was moving forward, that the world was going.
Aren't we talking about vehicles that are able to, move from combustible engines? Isn't CNG one of that?
Natalie, I'm sure Minister Young knows that even from 20 years or 30 years ago when I was a boy, people did not buy into CNG even then. Look at the figures we are seeing after 8 years. Let me make this point, because this point is really critical, and I say it hurt my heart. I was 29 years at the age, a young boy sitting in a Ministry of Energy meeting together with Mr. Babwa, and we tried to encourage them not to go in that direction. We told them people would not go there. Their plan was to convert most of the driving population, a population that the Minister of Finance said we have as many as 1 million cars on the road. I still don't believe that is a little less. But however, they were trying to convert all those cars to CNG. And 8 years after, we were only able to convert and bring in some 15,300 after we would have invested so much money in CNG for 8 years, hundreds of millions. So I must wonder now, has that brought in the return? 15,300 cars would never bring in the return, the expenditure.
Minister.
Yes, allow me. First of all, Rondell and people, you have to admit things evolve. Right? So I would be the first to admit, when I came in, I looked at the CNG. CNG has not gone where it's supposed to go. It's only 200 million invested. 200 million is a huge amount. Look at the short period of time. Electric vehicles are the way to go. It is a transition, Rondell. So it's not going to happen overnight. Nothing is going to happen overnight. We look at the electric vehicles. You will also have to admit, within the last 2 years, the technology with electric vehicles has just gone through the roof. 2 years ago, it was difficult to charge a fully electric vehicle. Now you have charging ports. You could build in your home. It sticks into the same sort of electric outlet. Like your dryer and your water heater. So you can now do it at home, whereas before that technology didn't exist. As you saw, we launched in the Presal gas station the other day. We have the first public electric port, and it's run straight off of solar energy. So the whole thing is carbon neutral. And that is the way we have to go. But it's a transition. As a government, we do not expect that overnight this thing is going to change. I heard what you said about the hybrids. Please. But with CNG, it is different. Natalie, the truth is with CNG, it is a different technology. Persons tried it because it was a cleaner burning fuel than diesel, super premium and this type of thing. It didn't work because Rondell is right. 15,000 vehicles out of the million vehicles comes from Ministry of Works and Transport, right? I was there when we called for those figures, so you go take that up with licensing office, right? But the point is that when you looked at it, and it was in the last term, I said people at the cabinet table we were discussing, I said we have to move away from this CNG. Now, it doesn't mean, and I don't want the people who've converted and using it to think we're not going to use it. You look at Presal gas station, half of the filling pumps are CNG, so we're going to continue to support it. But technology has changed. Listen, in the energy industry, in the past month, I wake up one morning, BHP's oil and gas assets are being sold to a company called Woodside. Up to the week before, I'm talking with the BHP executives in Houston to get them to commit to the deepwater gas. Now I have to go and find Woodside. You wake up one morning, BP, the person who I was speaking to, the executive vice president, the person in charge of the assets in the world, which we fall in, I had a conversation with him on the Thursday. The following Thursday, I wake up that morning, he leaving the company. They're bringing in somebody from renewable. So it's changing so quickly, and it is no different with the technology with vehicles. The good news is the world now, Rondall, as you see, is moving towards electric vehicles. You have people like President Biden saying by 2030, we have to move away from internal combustion. I don't know if they'll make those marks, right? We are not looking to make that mark, but we have to start somewhere and we have to push hard. So what you're going to see now is a rollout of exactly what Rondell was referring to. You need the infrastructure, but you no longer need a completely reliance on public infrastructure to charge your cars, because most of them now you could do at home. You may have to do some electricity conversion at home to get the right plug outlet.
So it takes a regular 220 to charge these vehicles.
Correct. And it can now do, the batteries have advanced. So 8 years ago, even 4 years ago, it was a more difficult thing. The cars and vehicles now can be charged in 4 hours. Those charging ports we just put in Presal, 40 minutes. Think about it. When you jump in your car now, all you have to do is change the way that you operate. So whereas you say, look, I will go down south, then I will spin my arrow, I'll come back along the east coast, and because they have gas stations along, so I'll fill up. Now, you're jumping into your car, make sure it's charged overnight. The ranges are between 200 to 300 miles on a full charge. You're getting all that. But what you do is you plan it.
That's the assumption that everybody can charge their car in their house.
Well, you have to make that decision. You're not going to buy a vehicle that your car charges home and you had to go to a petrol station, etc. But we are going to put in place the infrastructure. I've already mandated, I want one in the north, south, central, I want in east, and in Tobago. That's part of
How
it.
How soon we'll be able to see that?
But we saw the first rollout, and I was very proud of them in that Presal gas station. It is run by solar, the whole gas station, and they have this charging port, so it exists. We've proved we can do it. I want that done in this year. I want at least 4 of them, public charging spots in India, because Rondall and his friends are going to have to bring in the vehicles. People are going to have to take a leap. There is going to be skepticism. So there are 2 other plans.
But aren't vehicles coming in, electric vehicles coming in already, Rondall?
Not as much.
Not as many as the hybrid.
Let me just finish this point, Natalie, and because I need Rondall's help with this. There are 2 other areas that are important pillars in the success of this. And remember, it's a transition. 1, public communication, because you have to answer the questions of people who will say, but how again, if I can't get electricity down in South and in Mayaro, how am I going to move around? There's an easy answer to those questions. And 2 is the servicing of these vehicles, because it's very specialized. And that's what Rondall was just talking about. If we had jumped ahead a few years ago, you would have had these things in place.
Been training in it
Correct.
already. Yeah.
But it's a good opportunity for young people. So I'm excited about it, and it is not difficult. One of the concerns, I'll put it on the table now, which is why we went with the 2 years, is you're seeing the technology advance so quickly. The batteries are very toxic. And then the older batteries now, in the older vehicles, the first generation, they start to deteriorate, and they don't go to fix a battery. It's dispose of a battery. And then also those developed countries will say, well, look, we're not taking on this problem. Send that problem elsewhere. So that's another conversation we need to have. How do we safely dispose of these batteries? How do we safely figure out what to do with these batteries? And I am looking forward to
these are conversations that we spoke about already.
Correct.
And these are things that I'm saying that I don't want to go back.
Well, you can't change the past,
if 8 years ago, we'd have been at that position now. So, and talking about the 2 years, we still have to figure out what is the kilowattage on the motor, and the kilowattage is open.
So you have to bring everything.
But another one more thing, I'm a man on the ground when it comes to society as well. We don't want to create another exemption that only the higher stratosphere can access. Because if you're talking about 2-year-old electric, that's a very expensive vehicle. That is Teslas and the Porsche, and there's only one bracket of people that may be able to afford that. So how are we going to get the common man to transition? Because the 2-year-old Leaf might be nearly $200,000, and that is where the common man might be looking at, maybe looking to go towards that direction. So there's already so much exemption for people at the higher stratosphere. We need, however, and I continue to say that private transportation is an aid. I've always said that. I know you had a little tussle. Private transportation is an aid.
Not when I hear.
Private transportation is an aid to controlling the spread of COVID. You see everybody say, it's true. You understand? It is an aid, it is an asset. So I would have expected something in the budget to make, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And that is why we were looking towards the hybrid, because that is what the direction was.
Would die at that stone, sir. Like the whole public transport system.
No, of course not.
But you're saying if the government incentivized...
It was incentivized before. The public transport system never died. It was incentivized for 5 years. There was a sunset clause on hybrid and electric, not electric alone. And no one died. The Axios, the Aquas, these things were allowed to come into the country. And some of the same taxi men were able to buy those things as well.
Rondall, we know the position we're in as a country, and it's not something that's unique to Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
I can't remember the last time I heard like all taxes off a vehicle. Why not just look into your camera and encourage people to come and buy those vehicles, fully understanding that even though it's going to cost them some more, is that one, you're talking about the battery life of the battery life of your battery is so long. You're talking about being able to charge at home. I think for me, the bigger issue would be electricity. Correct. Are we going to be having outages? How are we going to ensure that the grid is good so that people can charge at their own convenience? But Rondall, all taxes off. Look in the camera and tell people to come and buy the vehicles. Bring in the vehicles and tell people to come and buy them.
I can't do that, because exemption exists. Full exemptions exist on a number of people in our society. I don't need to even point. But full exemptions exist for a number of people in society.
We need to stop acting as if it's a
and it is your right.
problem.
It is your right. I'm not saying no.
I ain't come here to defend that. Right.
But you know what? I'm here to defend it because I say this all the time. We're a hypocritical society. We want people in power, and yet we don't want to give them special rights. You expect you to go stand up. If that was the case where all the parliamentarians had to go and stand up in the line in the bank like everybody else, nothing would get done in the parliament. We have to cut out these foolishness as if somehow we don't understand that when you put people in positions of authority, you have to give them some break.
I understand what you're saying.
I really do.
But I mean, you're saying like if there aren't other members of society that put their lives on the line.
And
I'm a part of an NGO that we put our lives on the line every day, and we don't need an exemption for that. So there are other members in society that put their lives and businesses, and I'm talking from personal experience, and will get no exemption for it because they do it for the greater good. So I understand all this, and I'm not against the minister, I'm not against any exemption being there. But as I said, to further incentivize or further encourage people to go that direction, we need to look at that intermediary step, which is the hybrid vehicle, and possibly even if you say, hey, what, let's take out the duties, let's take out the motor vehicle tax and charge the VAT. Some kind of incentive, you understand what I'm saying, Minister?
You said you had that exemption on hybrid vehicles before, yes? How successful was it in terms of the amount of vehicles? How many people took up that charge to say, okay?
About 40 to 50,000 people. The two subsidies and exemptions and all these things came in at the same time with CNG, under the PNM ministry, government in 2015. They only to date, as the minister said yesterday, 15,300.
As compared to 50,000.
Correct, because as we said in that meeting in 2013, that people would not go in the direction. And the minister just admitted to that, and we're not discussing that again.
That's not. We're going to stick a pen in it for now. Drink some water on that. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with more inside the Now Morning Show. It's getting nice inside this house.
Rondall heated. Flash mirror.
Good morning. We're here back at TTT having a lively discussion with Natalie, Rokas, and my friend Rondall. So what I wanted to start off with is just by responding to some of the very good points that Rondall was making a short while ago. The first point is, listen, it is an exemption on all tax. That didn't exist before. They still had a little bit here, a little bit there. And we can't, as we said a short while ago off here, you can't change the past. Mm-hmm. So let's just focus on now, the present, and moving forward in the future. Yeah. Let me explain about the hybrid and why we had to take a different decision with the hybrids. You see the point you made a short while ago about the high end and is only the more wealthy in society. Mm. They were the ones abusing it. So all of a sudden, you had these people doing exactly as you said, the BMWs, the Porsche, etc. Don't screw up your face because we have the data, right? And that is one of the decisions. But that is a different decision now to hybrid. It is not one or the other, Rondall. So let us focus now. We've taken a decision. We have to transition towards electric. That doesn't mean overnight the million or, as you say, 800,000 vehicles have to all move to electric. But we need to make it easier. This is the first step. So don't think this is the whole rollout of the policy. You're going to hear me talking about it. As I was telling Cabinet yesterday, I have a 26-page document. You don't hear Cabinet notes 26 pages. I come in because you participated in consultation with the Ministry of Energy. We went around, we discussed with all of the key stakeholders. The other things we have to look at. What is the cost of the charging ports? What for your home? Do we incentivize that? Natalie, you raised an important point. The grid. That is one of the things you have to look at, because if a huge amount of people move towards electric cars and you're charging it at night, does that then affect the grid? How do we make sure and maintain steady? All these things are being done in conjunction with other initiatives, for example, solar. Right? I'm pushing hard to get a solar project, 2 of them done, that will bring in 112.2 megawatts into the system. We need to move there. So I want to ask the country, and I want to ask you, Rondall, to join me with this. Let us not always focus immediately on, well, what else? Give me. Let us say, okay, because the government still has to balance. We still have to have revenue on this side. But to me, it is a massive step in the right direction. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight, but let's focus on it. And let me tell you about the 2 years. There is a real problem with potential dumping. I'm not saying you do that or your colleagues do it, etc. But the developed world has that tendency that they want to sell us what they don't want, right? They're giving us their field dreams and are not using it with the used cars, right? But we have to be conscious of that. And I am very, very concerned about proper disposal of waste. And the research we've done, how do you handle the batteries, etc. As you know, with electric vehicles, the batteries, the whole running, as I was explaining yesterday to some colleagues, in an internal combustion engine, you have the engine. In an electric vehicle, that is now the battery. So it's not a battery as we know to start the car, a normal internal combustion engine car now. It is the whole vehicle. So when that goes down, the replacement of the battery, so they may think, well, I am fighting up with that, you know. It is better, and you know the way it works in these developed countries is lease vehicles, right? So as your vehicle reaches a certain point, they say, Rondall, look, the newer version, come here, you know. Just take the newer version, and we're the older one. So we just have to be careful as a government. You always need to protect. And what I want to encourage is we work together, right? That's the only way we're going to move this country forward, you know.
Yeah. So, Rondall, you don't think it can work with that 2 years, 2 years lifespan for the vehicles?
I don't think it's going to work, because I think it's going to create another exemption for the higher stratosphere. I would like to respond also to that.
I don't understand that. Why do you believe that if you have a vehicle?
Because the cost that is going to be. The cost that is going to be. Yeah, it's going to be too high for the normal or middle class person to transition.
What's the average cost of one of those electric vehicles?
But that's what we're saying. We're saying the Leaf, which might be the cheapest thing, might come up to about 22,000, 25,000 a 2-year-old. US. Maybe it could even be more than that. And the thing is, I want to respond to the point of the higher stratosphere taking advantage of hybrid. Your government would have dealt with that, I believe. The minister would have come before the parliament, and you all, not with the electric alone, also with the hybrid. You all would have reduced it from the exemption that was up to 2,000 cc. You all reduced it to 1500 cc.
And what you have happening with it now?
But not that you're not getting those. You can't get a Mercedes-Benz. You can't get those things. The most luxurious thing we could have gotten was a Vezel. We couldn't even get the Prius again because the Prius is 1.8. And that is the most common hybrid.
And what is happening with those? Have you all seen? So that's the perfect example because it's not hypothetical, it's real. So you cut out the high end and you've come down with a lower CC. But tell me how many of them will come in? How many people are still picking up? So it exists.
So what exists?
But that's the point I'm making. If you're saying that the high end gone and you have the low end availability of exemptions, it does.
No, but the point I was making is the reason that you all curtailed it is because the high-end people were the ones, the higher stratosphere was benefiting and not the lower stratosphere.
So we dealt with it, and you've just said the exemptions exist for the smaller vehicles, and that exists now.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, because
the sunset clause came to an end last year at the end of December, so that's why we're asking you to put it back. So I'm glad you think it's existing right now, so that you could reinstate it, so at least up to 1500. Let me get the Aqua, let me get the Axio, let me get the Fielder, let me get those vehicles. Right? So the higher end has been dealt with, as you rightfully said.
I don't consider myself what you call it? A high end.
A bougie?
Sweetheart, I drive a Nissan B15 and I've been driving it since I've been in this country. I haven't even been able to afford to change it.
And you see, when you have that B15 still, there's a foreign use B15. So all the 10-year dumping that the minister said that it was dumping in Trinidad.
Yeah, but that was
the batteries.
Correct. He was talking about
the disposal of the batteries.
Correct. He said there's a culture.
Of the developed world.
Don't misquote him. I'm going to defend him if
Can I finish?
Go ahead.
He said in the developed world there's a culture that when they're ready, they don't leave something come for a new one, they say, all right, we had to get rid of it.
It's true.
But it's the truth.
It's true.
You're saying that, but it came here and some of them even better, somebody, I always remember.
No, he didn't say it to be bad, no. He just saying this is what happens.
He didn't say it would be good too.
Exactly, he didn't say either. He just said this is what happens. This is the fact.
All right, let me go ahead. Let's go ahead.
Let me agree with you. I bought it because it's what I could have afforded, right? But the reality is that is not what I would have wanted. It would not have been my choice. Now, if I get the opportunity to see a vehicle that I can buy where I know that even if it costs me more now, and you and Mr. Babwa made the point the last time you were here that electric vehicles might be more expensive, but is that you can rely on it to last longer. That you don't have the issues. So I'm saying, now you're talking about removal of all the taxes. And I'm still asking her to look into the camera and tell the people to come and buy the thing.
What I'm telling you, Natalie.
You feel he's been ungrateful, Minister?
No, we can't be.
I'm not saying he's been ungrateful. I don't think he's been ungrateful.
The exemptions was there before in the same sunset clause for the electric too. It was for the hybrid and electric. Remember, I did since I was a little boy, I could tell you. So long and short of the story, it existed from 2015 for the hybrid and electric. Full exemption. It came to an end. The sunset clause ran from 2015 to 2020. We came on the television saying if they allow the clause to end, that all these taxes would come back on electric and hybrid vehicles. If both were reinstated, from 0 to 1500 cc's, taxes were implemented. All the taxes were implemented on the electric. Now, this is what we are saying. If we now see the prudence of going in that direction, it is important now to reinstate on both. Even if you're saying, even if you don't want to...
How many people bought those electric vehicles in the time that it had that exemption?
People purchased this morning.
The electric that people put. No, because we have to go to intermediary stage. It's important.
You are saying, you have come here, your whole submission, or a big part of your submission is focus on the hybrid.
No. I'm saying we just can't jolt into electric.
Okay, and that is what I'm saying.
Because that's where we want to go.
Okay.
Yeah, but you didn't say that when you had the exemptions on both of them.
We were saying that all the time. Guys, we are the ones, we're not advocating for this under this administration alone. The reason hybrid and electric is even part of this dialogue is because myself and Mr. Babwa, when they were going to raise the price on super, they said the only alternative, when they raise gas, people have no choice, they had to go CNG. And we were the ones that suggested another alternative, hybrid and electric.
All right, hold that point. Minister, we do have to go to a break. It is TTT, the Now Morning Show. Budget matters, and we can't seem to agree just as yet as to whether or not we need those incentives on hybrid, and we can't jump into electric, but electric is here, you know, so stay with us. More when we come back.
Morning Show. I hope I did it as well as you all expected.
You did
Welcome back to the Morning Show, but we're having fun here this morning.
I want Rondall to say on air what he just said off air.
I don't say that anytime.
Go ahead, look at the camera.
Look your camera straight ahead.
I said that he's a minister that has given us a hearing. Simple as that.
No, that's not what you said. That's not what you said.
No.
That is what you said, and I quote, you said he is the first minister.
That give us a hearing.
All right.
So at the end of the day.
No, but you know you cut it short. Rondall.
But it's the same thing I said. I'm not making sense.
Hold on.
It's not the first person who give you a hearing. It's the first person who give you some good incentives.
No, that was there before too. Under their government.
All right,
yes.
just now, hold on.
You see?
Okay, let's
You
just
know what happened to you? You're getting too much.
Just now, wait.
You're getting is that the child who always get candy and all of a sudden?
It's not. Let me make one point.
Hold on. Hold on.
All right, go ahead.
What this really boils down to is that the government has given this incentive for electric vehicles.
Yeah.
There was an incentive before on both hybrid and electric.
Right.
Mr. Fields is saying he wants to get back the one on hybrid as well as the electric, right?
Understood.
And the government is saying right now we have only implemented the electric, and that's what it is right now. Is there a possibility of re-adding the hybrid vehicles?
Listen, I come to deal with what is on the table now.
Right.
That is a discussion.
So you don't know?
That is a discussion that'll have to take place. The door is not shut.
Right.
But what I'm saying is let us focus on what is there now. As I was telling Rondall
Does that give you
off
some
air,
peace, Mr. Fields?
Some level
The door
of
not
peace
closed.
that the door is
So there's
closed,
possibility.
So that there's some
Well,
possibility.
Rondall, you must have known that the door is never closed with this
Don't say
minister.
that. Not in our historical past and the not in our past
Well, listen, as the
experiences.
minister kept saying, we're not here to deal with the past because
Yeah,
we can't
but
change it.
obviously, I would not just believe the present. I have to go based on what we are accustomed
experience
to.
has shown you.
Exactly.
And
I
which
want
is
to
also
ask
right,
the
yeah, go
minister. You mentioned before this when the CNG situation happened that only 15,000 cars took place, and you're saying that this is the gas that burns cleaner, that burns better, and you're estimating that it would be around till 2050. That assumption is based on what? If it is that the response to CNG and the gas
which assumption exactly?
that gas will be in use
Oh,
primarily
okay.
and bring us
So-
that income until 2050.
So right now, understand Trinidad is just one of the producers of natural gas in the world. So it was last week, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm in an international panel with ministers who export gas because it's based in Doha, right? The Gas Exporters Forum. And we're having that discussion. Right now, coal is the worst as a fossil fuel, as we all know.
Right.
You then have oil that produces the normal petroleum products. That also burns very dirty.
Yes.
But then you have natural gas. The world can't move straight away. If you look at what's happening in Europe right now, their prices have escalated with natural gas because there's a surge for demand because all of the wind stopped, the solar thing. So all of them who had their renewables, and now you're facing some different types of either heat wave or cold weather. There now is a rush of demand for limited natural gas. So gas is going to be along, when we look at it, all of the pundits, so to speak, say until at least 2050 and beyond.
But do you think we are ready
And when I
as
say
a
gas,
country?
that is in natural gas, it's not petroleum products.
Do you think as a country we're ready and we have started making that transition in such a way that we'll be able to meet these deadlines? Because if we're talking about moving a country from oil and gas, and I don't know who's going to be sitting, especially if you're finding reserves, to be sitting on that. Do you think we're ready to take that leap and to move into whatever sphere we're going to move into to make money?
The point I want to make, Natalie, is a transition. All right? It's not going to happen overnight. So I don't want people to think that the government is not focused on oil and gas. A big part of yesterday, if you listen carefully to what Minister Stuart said, was on the energy sector and transition. What I have been advocating at the cabinet table, and thankfully the Prime Minister is very focused on the energy sector, is we have a limited time. How do we compete globally? Because you look, for example, Guyana and Suriname, massive oil finds.
Yeah.
But I'm a pragmatic person, so I look at what we have. I'm not interested in what they have, etc. And how do I make what we have globally competitive to get the players who are already in Trinidad, the BPs, the Shells, the EOGs, Woodside, BHP, and all of these people to invest in Trinidad and help us get up the resources in the time we have. Finds on land, touchstone, and these types of things.
So then talk to us about the petroleum tax, because I know this has been a sore point for the
energy chamber, etc.
What
you
are
would
we
have
doing
heard
about
what
that?
Minister Stuart said. So what I've gotten is a commitment, and it wasn't difficult, that we need to look at the fiscal regime. So I want the energy companies out there to understand, just like I listened to Rondall, I've listened to them, and we are going to reform it because we need to make sure in the next bid rounds, whatever we put out there, we have the right fiscal regime to make sure we are competitive globally, because the BPs, the Shells, all of these companies are shrinking how much money they're pumping into oil and gas. So we have to be at the forefront of their spend. So you're going to see SPT on oil. We're going to reform that. I've spoken to them. PPT, royalty, these are areas I've listened because I've been at the forefront of negotiations with these companies for 6 years, pushing Trinidad and Tobago, and you're going to see changes in that area because we have to find the balance. Let us utilize what we have whilst contributing. So the electric cars are a move. Rondall and his partners and them could say what they want, but I know they know at the end of the day, the removal of all taxes on electric vehicles has to be a positive step. You know, you mightn't get, I starting here, but it's a step in the right direction. So let us focus on that. You could still advocate for the hybrids, etc. Right? But right now, we have as a country now the electric vehicles, and I'm telling you all, I don't make promises, but we are going to be focused on how we build out the infrastructure to make that a success. Because the same way somebody thought 40 years ago, 30 years ago, CNG was the way to go, and they leaped in that. That happens in life. You think at this time, at the start of 2020, February 2020, when we were all jumping up for Carnival, nobody thought a month later we're dealing with a pandemic and it reached the shores. I fell down, dislocate my shoulder. 2 days later, they're the team leading the charge with the Prime Minister and how we deal with this pandemic, and it's been a learning exercise. What that has taught me is that you have to be flexible, you have to be able to move, you have to listen. Because if we didn't listen in Trinidad and Tobago to the science, to what the medical, if you're not looking to see what's going on in other countries, 1 minute they're saying, follow this country, follow that country. 2 weeks later, they have oxygen in that country, their hospitals overrun. Don't do this, don't do that. On the way here, I see New Zealand is now saying, look, Delta has reached, we can't aim for zero COVID. There's no fixed formula, right? So we have as a country, and what I want to beg for is let us pull it in the same direction, because you already have people who determine to pull us backwards because they don't care. It's slash and burn, destructive. It's you talk about when you're a young boy, you have your young children. We have to build the future for them. So what do we have now that we could create and move us forward in the right direction?
I think Rondall have to just work on his flossing because his children was able to out-floss him.
One of the things, Minister, that I would challenge in terms of you say what we have, I think one of the resources that often it feels as though the government overlooks is our human resource.
Correct.
I feel like we don't invest enough into our human resources because that's our renewable product. Like, that's not going nowhere. We know people will always be here. And he said we have no shortage of ideas. How are we investing in that going forward?
Again, when you look at it, successive governments, it was a PNM government way before our time that took a decision at independence, invest in education. And that's been built on. So that's the first investment. Make sure that you have the ability and the availability of education. Now, what do we need to look at? So you'll see one of the things yesterday Minister of Finance did, and you're merging it with property tax coming on board. The Revenue Authority. Let us go out there, and it might seem like a small drop in the ocean. Let's find 100 young, bright graduates to come in and help do the audit. The accountants. One of the other things, even in the energy sector, we're looking at how do we get our young people and our experienced people out there in other provinces to give the experience we've had, to be the consultants. So we are, again, open to ideas. What is it that we can do? But the world is changing quickly. A big part of the budget yesterday was the focus on the SMEs and the digitization, because that's young people real good at that. They could build an app, they could do all these things, help Rondall and them with their business that you just come on your phone. You could start to choose a car and these types of things. So we have to encourage that. I heard you all talking with Valmiki before about the research and development. So these are the areas now. Understand how difficult it was and how well the Minister of Finance and the government did, in my view, objectively, to find a stimulus budget in a difficult period where you're looking for revenue and these types of things.
I accept that the minister came, not for the first time, not for the second time. I find that when I watch and listen to Colin Imbert's budget presentation is that they make a lot of sense. is that he somehow comes with something and I'd be like, oh, how did he think about that? Or, you know, and I do believe that this government, you know, invest in the human resource. I think we're at a point, though, as a people, where we take what we have for granted so much that we don't recognize how much we are given. I literally believe that. Because Trinidad and Tobago is a country that, because of this oil boom, we don't realize just in the transfer and subsidies, it's because you're investing in the human resource. When you look at the CPEPs, when you look at the state enterprises, when you look at the education that's free, all of that is investment in human resource. Literally, but we take it for granted. So when we get cuts to gate, we vex. But you have people who've gotten 4 and 5 degrees out of gate.
And they abuse it.
And you know, and no, you have people who have made use of it and went from, you know, okay, there are people who used it. I remember one of my friends in the media kept saying to him, you know, go. One of the things I know is that you never know when policies are going to change. Go, 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 go. And here the policy has changed. Do you know what I mean? So,
if I could chime in there,
yeah,
I understand that, but I always, for the last few weeks, I've been saying that we need to also incentivize with focus. So I understand the challenge that GATE posed. Yes, GATE made everyone get a degree, but I have many people with a degree without a job now. Yes. Yeah. What was the focus of that incentivization
and the human resource? So there's a part of it where, yes, education is free.
Correct.
Education is fantastic, and we need education, we need training, but then what happens?
What direction?
We try to build entrepreneurs with no capital. So they have nowhere to get money to be able to start their business. But
that's not true. So what you've also seen in this budget and in the Ministry of Trade, in the past few years, we've actually approved some grants for those areas.
You approving them and them being implemented is two different things.
Well, that is a difficulty.
Implementation is a big problem. That's what we've been speaking about yesterday, this morning. Implementation is the biggest problem that we face.
So what I want to pitch, coming out of what the three of you all have said, and ask for, we need a change in culture, because it's not a handout system. All right, even with the people working, let us do our work. Let us do our day's work and give an honest day's work towards it, because that is all going to pull us in the right direction. Why isn't it being implemented? You know how frustrating it is at times as a cabinet minister. You take decisions, you work hard, you say, okay, this is going to drive us forward in the right direction. That's where it's supposed to end for a cabinet minister, you know? But then it falls along somewhere along the way.
No, because they have agendas along the way. There are people with their own misgivings. There are people with their own struggles on a daily basis.
But then as a minister, when you get down now in the trenches and you start to drive it, one of the things when I was at National Security, they started to say, well, you get into operational, because I would call them in, I would say, okay, look, the intelligence saying is X, Y, and Z. Look, I connect the dots here. Let's get operational. That is too.
Yeah. But I really like this the state show some level of focus, and I continue to use Jamaica as an example. They focus on sport education. Tab Bolt, and that's the fastest woman there, the fastest man that ever ran there. They're talking about Cuba. They focus on medicine. They have the greatest doctors there now. If we use this opportunity with the electric and we invest in the youth, I said we wanted to sponsor a car 8 years ago. You understand? If we do that now, we may have the best electric and hybrid technicians to export across the Caribbean.
Well, guys. Yeah, we're gonna do it, and we have a lot of things that we're gonna have to work on. Unfortunately, we have no more time to discuss it this morning.
Rondall, you okay?
I'm real good.
Minister, you okay?
I'm real good.
You okay, Nathan?
I survived. I'm good. I'm good.
All right, guys. Remember to make a difference today now, because together we aspire.
Together we achieve.
You see, and if we do it together, we can actually do the thing, man. All right, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye,
see you tomorrow.
Guys.